Welcome to the Good Book Club podcast, where we make all our book club meetings available for you to enjoy. This month, we discuss the book Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by Yuval Noah Harari. Yuval Noah Harari, author of the critically acclaimed New York Times bestseller and international phenomenon Sapiens, returns with an equally original, compelling, and provocative book, turning his focus toward humanity's future and our quest to upgrade humans into gods. What then will replace famine, plague, and war at the top of the human agenda? As the self-made gods of planet Earth, what destinies will we set ourselves, and which quests will we undertake? Homo Deus explores the projects, dreams, and nightmares that will shape the 21st century, from overcoming death to creating artificial life. It asks the fundamental question, where do we go from here? This The Good Book Club meeting was originally held on Sunday, April 13th, 2025.
Welcome, everybody, to the Good Book Club. It is our April edition. I can't believe we're already here in April. This means we only have, 4 more months of our season, and then we have to choose new books. So I think everybody start thinking about that. It's coming up. We always start our book clubs by reading our mission statement. I'll read that for us. The Good Book Club mission statement. The Good Book Club was created to bring together nuanced Mormons, post-Mormons, and others with a shared interest in Mormonism. We are introspective, critical thinkers seeking to learn, connect, and build relationships through the catalyst of literature. We welcome all who are searching for a safe space to share authentic thoughts, feelings, and ideas through open dialogue and shared experiences relative to Mormon culture. As we deconstruct previous beliefs, we encourage all to find happiness in the process of discovering new religious ideologies, spirituality, and life philosophies. That is our creed. I feel like by now I should have it memorized, but I don't. Maybe I'll work on that. Before we get to our actual discussion, I'm going to go through a couple events that are coming up, or just things to be on the radar. Other reading opportunities. This book by the amazing Dan McClellan is coming out sooner than later, April 29th. It's called The Bible Says So, What We Get Right and Wrong About Scripture's Most Controversial Issues. We are going to invite Dan on the book club next year because this is going to be one of our books. And he is doing like a signing speaking tour. I'll try to get some dates because I think he will be in Utah and some other places. But you can pre-order this. It's going to be amazing. Another thing coming up for those of us that are here in the Salt Lake area, just kind of stumbled upon this. In fact, I think it was book club member Tom who showed this to me, but it is kind of a little symposium Saturday, April 20, is that 8th? I can't read, or 6th, I think. 6. Sorry, I know I'm kind of squinting. It's from 3 to 5, and it's at the University of Utah. We're going to be discussing, the main reason that it caught my attention is because Matt Harris is going to be there talking about second-class saints and some other amazing authors. This is free. You can look this up. You can go on their website and you can just request either a Zoom link. You can watch it virtually, or you can actually attend. I'm planning on attending, and you just kind of sign up for a space as it's available. So free. Go see Matt Harris and some of these other amazing authors. I wanted to let you guys know, looking forward to summer. This is only a couple months away. Sunstone is here again. It's going to be July 31st through August 2nd. It's going to be on the University of Utah campus. You can look that up online, the Sunstone Symposium. There'll be more information coming out. You can get tickets. Always really good. So many good speakers. So fun to connect with everybody. I would love it if a lot of us from the Good Book Club came. Maybe we could all go out to lunch during it, or have some kind of little get together. Very quickly, I will announce our book for, I can't even lift it. It's so heavy. Our book for next month is The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow. I have started this book. It is pretty intense and ponderous and scholarly, but amazing. And our discussion leader is going to be Lynette. She's going to be giving us some information about this at the end. The one thing I would like to say is, do not be daunted. If you cannot finish this, please still come to the discussion. Maybe, hunt and peck for things that you want to read about. The discussion will be amazing, even if you're not able to make it all the way through the book, but it is incredible. All right. That being said, our book today is Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow by the amazing Yuval Noah Harari. And we have book club founder Bruce as our discussion leader. We're so lucky. So right now we'll just let Bruce take it away. And please, everybody, feel free to use the chat feature. I was going to say that while we have our discussion, that's great, but it's also really good to input, and put down thoughts and feelings and comments in the chat. That adds a lot to it. So, all right, Bruce, take it away.
Okay, my question is, does everybody see my first slide? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And raise your hands mechanically, or now I have the the people who don't have their video turned on, we're hiding just your name. If you raise your hand, then you'll come up on the screen and stuff. So, yeah, I found this book interesting. For me, the purpose of the book club is to kind of, figure out how the world works, because my previous concept of how the world worked was there was a literal God in charge, that there was a pre-existence that we came from, that we're here in life for a test. There's afterlife with reward or punishment. And basically, we are broken and need redemption. And I no longer think that. And so for me, the purpose of the book club is, to figure out how the world actually works. Evolution, science, we're complex, evolved social creatures, and answering the questions for me, where do I fit in? What do I value? And how do I find a place in community? I just turned 68. I've got, maybe 20% of my life left and figuring this out. And so that's what I come to the Good Book Club for. So today's book is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And he was born in 1976 in Israel, 49 years old. He's a historian and professor at Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He specializes in world, medieval, and military history. He was the author of Sapiens, and that was the second book that our book club read. And he's a public intellectual speaking on technology, AI, socio-political implications of scientific advancements. And it warms my heart that he's a married gay man. Here's some of the things he's written. He wrote Sapiens in 2014, and we had it as our October book in 2020. And then he wrote Homo Deus. He writes it originally in Hebrew, and then I think it was actually 2015, it was in Hebrew, and then it was translated. And then the other books. And I'm proposing, if people have an interest, his next book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI, because I think that may be a good book. And just to go over some of the basic criticisms, and keep this in mind as we're discussing, people criticize him that his speculation is not sufficiently grounded in current scientific understanding, and that was as of 2016. Well, it's 2025, and I think some of his stuff is more grounded in basic scientific understanding. A deterministic view of technology, underestimating human agency and potential for social change. And then human agency was our discussion in our first book, Free Will. Now, they criticize overly broad generalizations, and then, all fear. Readers find his scenarios unsettling, which I did. So he talks about the three challenges for mankind from the beginning: famine, war, and disease. And, largely around the world, there are fewer people dying of hunger, but there's still a little of that. And here's some examples of people dying of famine. The Great Chinese Famine, 59 to 61, 25 to 45 million people died. The British India Famine, 1943, 2 to 3 million people died. The Soviet Famine, 1932 to 1933, 3 to 7 million people died. And it seems like now there's fewer of the millions of people dying from famine. And then there's war. World War II estimated 70 to 85 million people died. World War I, 15 to 20 million. And then the Taiping Rebellion, which I wasn't aware of, 20 to 30 million people died. And so while if you're in Syria right now or in Gaza, Syria is trying to answer questions. I'm not asking it. And then we've got disease. And, the Spanish flu in 1918, 1919 killed 50 million people. The Black Death, it was estimated 75 to 200 million people. And then based on, my reading of 1491, and I'm also reading 1493 of the Columbian Exchange, indigenous Americans, untold millions died. And then just HIV and AIDS, they estimate 36 million people have died. So recently, and this is very recently, because some of these things are just, almost within my lifetime, have largely been eliminated. So what are the projects that will replace famine, plague, and war at the top of the human agenda of the 21st century? Homo Deus is having raised humanity above the beastly level of survival struggles. We will now aim to upgrade humans into gods and turn Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. I picked these as the idyllic people. I don't care about her, but he's very good looking. And hence, even if we don't achieve immortality in our lifetime, the war against death is still likely to be a flagship project of the coming century. Okay, how many people here saw the Netflix Don't Die, the Man Who Wants to Live Forever? Okay, this hit home when I saw it. He's a former Mormon, a former missionary, a BYU grad. He made some millions in some of the payment system stuff that was, I think, bought by PayPal. And so, he ended up getting divorced. Now he spends $2 million a year, anti-aging, defeating death. This picture here is how he infuses his teenage son's blood so that he lives longer. And there was an article, I believe it was April 3rd in the Salt Lake Tribune, and they mentioned that he is thinking about starting his own religion. Okay, does this sound familiar to anybody? I mean,
I feel like he's taking on his own resurrection, right? He's making his perfect immortal body on his own terms.
Yeah.
I think this shows evolution because, religion is really about us thinking that we're going to live forever. We just die and continue to live. And I think now that atheism and secularism is coming into play, people are going, well, the only way is we've got to really not die. And so this is just kind of the next step. And I wanted to say, Bruce, I read this book probably 6 or 7 years ago. It came up after we read Sapiens, and I always told Rebecca it's kind of a little far-fetched. And 6 or 7 years ago it seemed that way, but now it's like I look back and I said this year when we were looking at it, I'm going, he's pretty accurate. Let's go ahead and read it. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, no, I found it just so interesting because I follow some of these guys on like YouTube, and I take more supplements than I think I should take, and my doctor thinks I should take, trying to live a longer health span. I don't want to particularly live a lot of years longer, but I want to be healthy. And so I call them longevity bros. And sometimes when you start getting a lot of money and just, those basic needs are taken care of, then you don't have the, same view on life as as a lot of people do. So I thought that was interesting. And he's an example of somebody trying to become God, their own God. And okay, so question, do you sense people moving on from war, famine, and disease as major problems? And what other issues do you think people are going on to? We're not worried about where our next meal's coming from. At least hopefully right now we're not worrying we're starting a war. And in general, we have vaccines and many of the diseases that have killed us landed.
I think one that's becoming more important is becoming irrelevant. With all the new machines and everything that are coming, I mean, you can see it coming, trucks that drive themselves. You're not going to need truck drivers anymore. You're not going to need production workers anymore. People are going to start becoming irrelevant because the machines are going to start doing the work. And that's a real problem. If what they're saying with AI comes to play in the next 10 years, a lot of us are going to be having a hard time finding jobs. And then how do you pay for anything at that point? That's certainly something I think that's going to be coming up in the next decade or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other ideas where we see people when we're not, worried about, polio, smallpox, things that different people grew up with? Jackie.
Okay, I think that because I have two younger adult children, and they've gone through the whole social media thing. I think that people are focusing on experiences a lot. I do see that on social media. Everybody shares what they're eating, where they are, what their relationship is. So it's like we've come to this share everything in our life and then have FOMO because we're not doing the same experience as everyone else. But I also know that experiences have become important to the younger people. They don't have money to spend on houses, and they're working, and they don't have to worry about these things like our ancestors did. So now it's like, what can we do to, hike or travel, and we see that in their blogging and in all of that. So that's kind of what I've seen with the younger generation.
Cameron.
Yeah, it seems like there's two things that are problematic right now, and I do think less war, famine, and disease are amazingly positive for our society. But it does seem like there's some trends with people's distrust of institutions, in particular religion, and people moving away from those things. That a lot of people are still searching for something in their life, maybe a spirituality of some sense, and some I am worried turn to pseudoscience whether that's I don't know, crystals or different things, tarot cards, things. And no offense to anyone that uses any of that, if as long as they know there's not like some supernatural thing behind it. The other thing I worry about too is the people using politics as their new religion, and I think we see that in a lot of the polling where people identify as Christians, but they don't actually go to church, and the reason they do is because their political leaders are saying that they're Christian, even though they don't seem very Christian at all to me. So I think those are two kind of disturbing trends that we're seeing recently.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else see kind of where Rebecca?
I was just going to say, without, with all of your basic needs basically met, which we hope this is a scenario, we can focus on things like bringing back extinct animals, right? We talked about this in our pre-show, like the dire wolf, right? Everybody's so fascinated by that. But again, just things like that you're like, what does this mean? What is this? Bring back the past, right? Recreate, figure out who you are, who we were, where it all started, where it's going. A lot more self-exploration, I think, which is what I'm also hearing Cameron and Jackie talk about. So, and I agree with what you said, Cameron, as far as, younger people being into different things like that. My oldest son, as we speak right now, is doing ecstatic dancing in sort of a religious group in Salt Lake. They meet every Sunday, and it's an experience where you emote through dance, as part of a religious, sort of a awakening kind of a thing. So, People are finding different things when they're not worried about finding their next meal. It is very interesting to see where this is going to go.
Now, ecstatic dancing, is that the Salt Lake, Utah Mormon version of a strip club? Or
I don't think so. No. And he's invited me to go. I think I might have to try it, but it's just reaching another level of consciousness through body movement. So it's just another one of those things where they're trying to have these experiences. Because I agree with you, Jackie, that, they can no longer have the things perhaps that we thought were just common things, a home or whatever. So it's all about what happens to me and my body and my experience and how do I feel and my relationships with others and what are we all doing together. So it's a whole different mindset.
Great. Gretchen.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so I was just having this conversation with my son. He's in his third year of medical school. So we were just talking about this last night, and we were talking, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation that we've had, but we've kind of talked about people have floated like a universal basic income or, something to like the ways that we can get rid of the problems of like clean water or, of energy that we really have the tools and we have the ability to get rid of a lot of these problems, just like, that was in the book here. So if everyone had like a universal basic income, and so we were just kind of exploring what that would be, and I'm not necessarily pressing for that, but just we were saying, okay, so if all of your basic needs were met, then that would really allow people to explore their creativity in lots of really amazing ways, or maybe to do nothing, maybe to just like, sit at home and read books and chat with everybody else, which, it sounds really good to me. But that could really explode people's creativity to, that we could really move forward in a lot of different ways if we didn't have to be worrying about striving all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mylene.
Oh, there you go. It's kind of interesting. I had a talk with my daughter this last week about this, and I agree with Gretchen and Rebecca that there's a lot of things that people can explore, and especially, when Rebecca was talking about this ecstatic dancing, I was thinking, well, we've had raves, we've had drum circles, ecstatic dancing, and I tend to classify this under the giant umbrella of intelligence and retrograde. It's like we don't know where to go when our needs are satisfied and we don't have to work any longer. And there's a possibility that this could happen in the near future, that most people could be taken care of without having to work. And unfortunately, I think it makes us less sophisticated intellectually. We tend to say, well, okay, so everything's taken care of. Now I can maybe explore these artistic parts of my past or things that I want to explore. But then all of a sudden, you're just denying everything that makes us human. Our ability to get to where we are now had to do with scientific thinking. And it seems like we're just setting that aside.
Okay, great. Thank you. Landon. And then Karin.
I agree with Mylene. In fact, I was just thinking I don't want to get political here or anything, but it seems like just in the last couple of weeks almost that we seem to be going backwards as far as rights and political things that freedoms that we've had in the past seem to be under attack to me, and so I kind of agree with Mylene. But the thing I was going to say was that it's the environment right now is probably the next important thing that we have to face, and there's some really positive things coming out. With Japan and Korea, I think, are going completely hydrogen engines in the next 5 years, which should greatly reduce global warming if these hydrogen engines produce, basically it's water that they produce as a byproduct, and I think energy as well, energy production. We're finding better and cleaner ways to produce energy and make that work. So I think that's the next big one. I think there's some things on the horizon. There's the uh, bugs that are supposed to be able to break down enzymes that are supposed to be able to break down plastics in just a matter of hours and stuff that. So I think there's some exciting things, and I think the AI stuff is going to help accelerate those, and we're going to find answers to some of those things that we've been trying to solve. I think they're going to come faster and faster. So I think there are some positive things too.
All right.
I was going to agree with Mylene and Landis too. We are making great progress. I do believe that climate change is our hugest challenge right now. But I also simultaneously see a whole lot of backwardsness. And I immediately thought of the people who are resisting vaccines. And as a believer in modern medicine and science, I just think, what is happening that people don't want to have their children vaccinated? And now there's this measles outbreak. So I see a lot of backwardsness going on at the same time that we have gained so much knowledge. So it's almost like a wash.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, and Yvonne mentioned some stuff. The having overcome famine, disease, and war is pretty local to us because we're the first world. There is some wars going on. I mean, maybe not the you know, 50, 100 million people dying at a really fast rate. Um, but then also, and not to be too political, but we've stopped the USAID support for vaccinations and World Health, and could that fall back into the just a previous period in time's level of disease?
Exactly.
And then also, if enough people with a certain level of power decide they're unhappy, they can take down the elite aristocracy. I mean, the French did it and guillotined, the king and queen and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Now, are you guys seeing my slides normally? Okay, because the view of them changed just slightly for me. And so then the next one is the Anthropocene, period of time during which human activities have had an environmental impact on the earth regarding as constituting a distinct geographical time interval. And I've got a video to play here. Let me see if, let's see. Nope, that didn't play. Okay, I had a problem playing this because Google wanted me to,
in the hot water.
Let's see, somebody needs to be muted.
Landon, maybe you can handle that. Just mute everybody across the board except for Bruce. And I have to say, Bruce, while you're looking for the video, I'm impressed you can even pronounce that word. That's amazing.
Well, okay, I got it from, let's see. I'm sharing this. Okay.
Let's see.
Can you see that now?
Huh?
Okay, and I'm trying to figure out how to start it. Oh, geez. Here we go. Nope, that's not bad. This is a technical thing that
it's always the tech, right? Everything goes smoothly until we
I
video. I guess if you can't play it, maybe you can paraphrase it. I remember you showing it to us. We could probably still discuss what was in it.
Well, they're talking about basically how this is the first time humans kind of have the ability to make a major change while knowing they have the ability to make a major change. There has been species and time periods that had a lot of effect on things, but we're the first ones where we know we can make changes. And the basic message was, I hope we take that power seriously and make some good choices. And I think that's kind of one of the basic issues of our lives now, because we do have the ability to affect the world. So I'm gonna see if I can get this. And now, do you see my slides? Okay. So then this brings it back to, I have a sense that Mormon believers are less interested in environmental pollution, climate change, and taking care of the world. Do you guys sense that also in talking, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, on the different shows that I'm on, I follow a lot of the second coming rhetoric, which has been dialed up in the last couple of years. Even just at our last conference, President Nelson says he's been prompted that it's close. And as I go on all these different faithful sites and kind of look at the comments and things, there is a sense that, we should care for the world to a certain point, but why worry about anything big? Or even your grandchildren's future, because Christ will return by then and Christ will make the earth perfect. So while they understand, others are concerned, they have special knowledge that it's all going to be fine. In just a few years, probably 2034, right after the Olympics is what everybody is saying. Christ will be back and the earth will be perfect. So yeah, there's definitely a sense of we're doing our part by going to the temple, preparing for Christ. That's how we are caring for the earth, as opposed to others who are actually out there actively trying to find a way to actually care for the earth. So it's a mindset.
Yeah. Landon. And then Karen.
I was going to say that it's doctrinally in our doctrine that God gave the earth to man for their use. And I think a lot of, not just Mormons, I think a lot of Christians as a whole look at it and say, oh, it's for our use. God gave it to us. And so he'll come back before it all runs out. So we don't have to be wise stewards of it. We just have to utilize it, and eventually it'll come around and we'll be okay. My mom always comes and tells me, oh, Jesus is coming back and that this will all be fixed. And I think that's a danger. That to me is the most dangerous part about the second coming, is people think we can ignore problems and let Jesus fix them rather than face them head on and make intelligent decisions on how we're going to, attack or face these problems.
Yep. Cameron.
I was going to say the same thing I'm sorry.
No, Karen. Go ahead.
I was going to say the very same thing that Landis said, and it's not just about Jesus, because there are other religions that have other attitudes about everything's going to be okay. So yeah, I don't think it's limited to Mormons.
Okay, great. Thank you. Cameron now.
Yeah, great comments. I just wanted to add another thing. I just read a book by Brian McLaren called Life After Doom. He's well known in Christian and Mormon circles because he wrote Faith After Doubt and Do I Stay Christian? Anyway, really great author. But the Life After Doom book is more about like what's coming and environmental issues and different things like that, and really wrestling with and grappling with it. And I think one of the most dangerous things about like end times apocalyptic type religion thinking, not only like a lack of stewardship for the earth, but there are some people that actually want to destroy the earth quicker because they think that that gets Christ back sooner to save us. And so they're actually trying to accelerate the chaos And to me, that is just horrible. I really, that makes me so sad that there are people that their religious belief is so strong that they actually want to see chaos and suffering and things like that to accelerate so that Christ will come back sooner.
Well, and then I also see the people either living their lives with that concept or making money off of that concept. Julie Rowe, we haven't heard a lot, at least on ex-Mormon Reddit, but the end of the world was sometime in 2018, I believe, and everybody bought their tents. And then we have the Lori Vallow trial going on, that you get crazies and the apocalyptic thinking. And I think there's, probably a number of Mormon offshoot groups and thought leaders that are kind of espousing this kind of stuff. And, but then I believe evangelicals, well, even Hasidic Jews, don't support Zionism because it's not in the order that they think it should be happening for Rebecca.
Yeah, to Cameron's point and what you were just saying, this gets into the political realm. And that's what's terrifying with Christians and LDS leaders who, we have the example of Senator Smith in Oregon voting for the Iraq war, even though he didn't want to, because he thought that would get missionaries into those countries. And as soon as missionaries are in those countries, then Christ comes back. So it's just this undercurrent that exists with Christianity and, like you said, some other religions. And if people are in a position to, vote politically, they're going to vote their belief, even if they really realize they're doing it or not. And if you think the end is near, you're not going to vote for environmental policies. You're not going to be as willing to do things like that because your belief is it's all coming crashing down really soon. And, look at rumors of wars and wars everywhere. That's part of what's going to happen at the end. So I have read on faithful sites when we're talking about, as Yvonne mentioned, the 3 wars going on right now, even more people are like, well, good. That's what has to happen. It's even closer. And that attitude is terrifying, especially if you're in a position of power politically to make some things move that needle. So very dangerous.
Yep. Okay, great. Let's see our next slide. Okay. This goes back to some of our previous discussions about the human ability and stuff, our ability to cooperate in large groups. It also gives us the ability to destroy things in large groups. The development of tribes, governments, armies, religion, and then the whole concept, I believe this, we've talked about this in several books about shared myth, the creation narrative, but the myth that money is worth something, the stock exchange, and now we've got the new myth of Bitcoin and stuff. So all of these things kind of can lead to existential risks when mankind tries to upgrade themselves. And then we have science and religion. And I mean, everything you guys have been commenting on, how does our religious view and how does our understanding of science and how to control things? I mean, before the advent of the atomic bomb, it was much harder to blow up things in such a large scale. And then you've got your religious belief. It's all just quite interesting. And, he wrote the book in 2015 in Hebrew and 2016 in English. And some of the criticism was that he didn't have a good, realistic understanding of where things are going. And as Landon pointed out, well, he predicted a little more. And then humanism's place. That's kind of what we had, our religion and then humanists. And this comes up into the discussion in preparation for next month's book, talking about where did the European intellectuals get some of the ideas for the Enlightenment and humanism. And the authors of next month's book talks about some of it they got from some of the Native American tribes and their view of things. So I don't know. It's interesting. Where does humanism go when technology and our changes so much? So, and emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, challenge humanist ideals. These advancements raise ethical dilemmas and question whether humans will remain central in decision making or be overshadowed by data-driven systems. And okay, so what are you guys seeing in your lives? Are you seeing effects of technology, data-driven stuff? Landon?
I think these issues are never going to go away. I don't think to say that science has no moral foundation or whatever it was that slide said. I think I think scientists always are struggling with how does this is this morally correct? These dire wolves that just came back. I was having a conversation about that. Is it ethical to bring back an animal that has been gone for 10,000 years, and where's its place in the world at this point? It's a completely different world than it was 10,000 years ago. And did that species go away because it had no place in the world anymore because the environment had changed to it? And would introducing it again, would it even be able to survive, or how would it react based on its natural inclinations and stuff? All of these questions come up whenever we try to make changes. And I think if we try to make changes to the environment, we're going to say, is this okay versus that? I think these are always going to be questions. I think that's just part of life and part of our world as humans, is we're going to always have these ethical decisions that we have to grapple with. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's interesting to try to work through some of these problems myself.
Great. Mylene?
One of the things that I've been thinking about was a lot of the books that we've talk about technology and how we're getting to the point where technology is going to free up people so that they don't have to work. They don't have to, we can have an income for everybody. But the question is, can society sustain people that are freeloaders? From the beginning of mankind, freeloaders are the ones that, people just don't like. Somebody has to maintain this technology. Somebody has to make sure all of these things stay in place, even though we're capable of feeding millions and millions more people now than we were in the past. What are we going to do at that point in time? Are we going to have one group of people that, the technicians and the scientists and the people who are working all the time to maintain and advance society and culture, and another group of hippy-dippy fallout people that are just going to sit around doing nothing and, beating their drums, trying to, bring forth other ideas that are not functional? I don't know. That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a good question. Lynette?
Hi. Some of my comments are kind of piggybacking off of Mylene's ideas, but I've noticed that in my life, just the simplest things like, navigating with a GPS now, instead of using maps like I used to, 20 years ago, that I don't know the geography as well as I used to, just even in the area that I live in. And so I lost something there. My brain is not doing it. I notice myself using the calculator much more often rather than doing things by hand. And I think we'd lose a little bit if we rely too much on technology. I think technology has a very important place in our lives, and it can help us do amazing things. But I also watch my grandkids doing inane things on their phones, just wasting a lot of time. And I think, if they were outside digging a hole, they would learn more than they would playing on their phones, right? So I don't know. But I also love technology because I listen to a lot of books while I'm outside working in the yard. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We need to use it wisely.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Jackie.
Okay. So it's kind of piggybacks on what Lynette was just saying. I started teaching in a junior high in 1988 and then retired teaching high school in 2021. And over that amount of time, technology changed so dramatically. And what we started to see is just like Lynette was saying, I taught foreign language. I taught Spanish. And, I learned Spanish. You had to memorize everything, right? And vocabulary, et cetera, et cetera. It has gotten to the point where these kids just don't or can't memorize. And then you think, well, I don't have anyone's numbers memorized anymore, like when I was a kid. I don't have anyone's addresses memorized because they're all in my phone and I can just look them up. I just asked my wife a question and she's like, let me Google that. And, like Rebecca had put in the chat earlier, these things are awesome. We don't play Trivial Pursuit anymore because nobody can remember the trivia. But those kinds of things. But the other thing I noticed is how it changes our social interactions. When our son was younger, he wanted to play video games. And I thought, well, why? That's a waste of time. Kind of like Lynette said, go out and play, dig a hole, ride your bike, whatever. But now that he's older and his friends are like all over the world, they play video games for an hour or two together and they're chatting and they're connecting. So that's one way kids connect too, is through their social media, through their technologies. And he keeps track of his friends in Northern California, on the East Coast, everywhere that way. And they're actually talking in real time, which is something, we could only do if we called one person at a time or we were on a party line. So there's good and there's bad. Kids don't seem to have as much attention span, more like a goldfish now than they used to in education. And unfortunately, education is still based on that industrial revolution model of put everybody in a classroom and teach. And I don't think that even with COVID and all the online stuff that we've truly been able to wrap our heads around, because I don't think who wants to be a teacher nowadays, but we're not teaching these new teachers how to reach kids as well through the technologies. So it's been a lot of change in the last 35 years that we haven't been able to keep up with educationally.
Great. Gretchen.
Yeah. So a couple of things with the technology. Something I was reading about this kind of goes into, our movement into becoming kind of like bionic people. We outsource our brain to our phones, like I do for sure. I keep all sorts of contacts in there. I keep my, anytime I have an appointment, I put it in my calendar. I take notes there, and so I don't have to keep that in my mind anymore. And so my brain has essentially grown bigger, and because I'm using my phone. And so people have been doing different research with people can move prosthetics just with their minds, right? So we can do things that are outside of our body. We are becoming disembodied in various ways as we're using our technology. And I think that can be both good and bad, very good in lots of instances, but not being able to, not like losing that embodiedness of the physicality of our selves. I don't know, is that just nostalgia? As we keep going that way, more and more people won't care about that very much. So there's, I'm torn about that. I really appreciate being able to use my body, and I think there's some tie-in to the church and kind of this puritanism of squelch any kind of sexual feelings, or only think about your spirit, and wearing hair shirts and these types of things that go throughout history. But so for me, trying to regain my connection with my being embodied is a really important part of my experience. But again, as as we move forward, and as generations move forward and we become less and less embodied, then maybe people won't miss it if they aren't used to it. Going to touching on the education aspect, I've read about a school that is down in Texas, I think, and I think they've only been going for a couple of years, but they're using AI technology in the morning, and they have a very personalized education for each child that goes to the school there. And so it has whatever their criteria are of whatever their curriculum is. It's very standards based. Once they learn the material, then they can move forward. But they do that for 3 hours in the morning, and then in the afternoon they spend all that time with the other students, being outside, doing personal projects, working in the community, doing all sorts of kind of embodied work. And the students in that environment, they're hitting, they're totally blowing out of the water all the regular benchmarks. You would say your academic benchmarks, plus they're getting all of this, embodied experience also. So I think that we can, the technology can be used in very good ways as we are creative in how we want to integrate those two parts of our being.
All right, great. Rebecca.
Oops, unmuting here. Yeah, I'm going to throw into the chat an episode of Mormonish with Troy Levitt about the complicated future of religion and AI, because this is huge. And I don't even think we know what's going to be happening. But just this last couple of weeks, the church, of course, has its handbook, and it has added an AI assistant to the handbook. So it used to be you'd have to go in online, and if you want to know, about sealings, can I be sealed to my second wife? You'd have to scroll down through all of the subheadings and the sections. The handbook is really where the gospel is, if you want to know. But now, instead of doing that, you can ask an AI assistant, tell me about sealings. And it supposedly will go out and give you the correct information, but that is not how that works, because AI hallucinates. It gives you an answer that thinks fits best to your question. So it's very interesting. Of course, the caveat it says in the handbook is make sure that you then go to the real section and read the real words. Who's going to do that, right? People are already using AI to write talks, lessons. I just came across an email, and I talked about this on the Mormon newscast, where it was former Young Women's President Bonnie Cordon. She's now the president of SVU. So she sends out an email at Thanksgiving to donors. Thank you so much. We love you. Here's a quote about giving from President Nelson. Great. 3 days later, she sends out an email. I'm so sorry. I had AI write that email, and it made up a quote from President Nelson. Please disregard that. And here's a real quote from him. So religion and AI, it's going to be really interesting. Other religions already have AI confessionals, AI priests, AI advisors, with mixed results. So it is something to watch, this intersection of religion and AI. I mean, I think it's really going to blow the lid off a lot of things in ways that we can't even anticipate.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, somebody mentioned Trivial Pursuit. That just rang a bell with me, because I have a games group that has been going for over 35 years. And we used to meet every 6 weeks because we were all single. We all worked at the same company. Then it devolved into once or twice a year for a couple decades. And now we meet quarterly. We play the latest version of Trivial Pursuit. Now, these are all retired actuaries, lawyers, and other people that worked at a large insurance company. And yesterday we were playing it, and almost every time we gave an answer, we're going okay, now this answer needs to be based on what was going on in 2013, because that's when this latest genus version of Trivial Pursuit was made, and the questions, because sometimes the rankings, it was which state produces the most peaches, and the answer was South Carolina. Sorry, Georgia, but we looked it up. The real answer is California, because they've eclipsed South Carolina and Georgia. And so it is interesting, that body of knowledge. And I don't know if any of you played the original 1980s version of Trivial Pursuit, my friends and I played it so much that we knew all of the answers. And if there was any boxing question, it was Max Schmeling, and stuff like that. But then this also gets into technology. In my social group, the Pasadena Village that Karen and Jeff are part of, I run an Apple tech support meeting. And then I also go over and help people set up their iPhones and their Macs. And one of the things I'm teaching a lot of our fellow seniors is have a question, look it up on YouTube, just type it in on YouTube, and most likely you're going to find somebody answering that question for you. And the second place is just type it into Google, where Google's AI will answer the question pretty well for you. So this is a whole different interface for my senior friends on how to look something up. I don't know, do you guys remember having the Encyclopedia Britannica on your shelf and stuff? And that was kind of where you looked up things. So yeah, technology is really affecting our lives. But as I believe it was Lynette was saying, I get it. Okay. We have a friend, Karin and I have a friend named Barbara, and she lives up in Altadena, and her house wasn't burned. But I use a GPS to get up there because when those housing developments were created, there's all these little winding streets. And as I get up to her house, I'm going like, I really don't know how to get home except just kind of going south down the hill without my GPS on my phone. And I don't know, did any of you use Thomas guides? I know in Southern California, I had one for LA County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, and sometimes Orange County. And they were always in the back. They used to sell them in big pallets at Costco. And so you'd have a pallet for each county. And you had to replace them every few years because the new housing tracts went in. And if you had a friend living in a new housing tract and their street didn't exist the last time yours was published, you couldn't find where they lived and stuff. So yeah, that has changed. Who would think of that now? But then I've also run into problems where if I lose I was going across Utah to Colorado, and I stopped and turned off my phone to use the bathroom. When I turned it back on, there was no cellular connection. So my phone had downloaded enough of the maps that it kept telling me where to go. I mean, this was, I think, across 40. There was no other place to go. I mean, there was the one road, but I didn't get map service until I got near like Steamboat Springs and stuff. And so, yeah, our reliance on that. So very interesting. Gretchen.
Yeah, one thing I was just thinking about with that happened this past week. I had a question about something about hair care, and I have a daughter who's a hairstylist, and she does all of that. And so I thought, well, I can reach out and ask her, ask her this question. And so I did that, but then I also went to AI and asked the question, and I got a very I got different responses from both places. But I thought what's really kind of troubling is if we depend on our AI or even Google or whatever to get our information or to get our we're getting our needs met without that interpersonal connection. And I think that it is becoming easier and easier to become isolated as we turn to these artificial tools rather than reaching out to, hey, you know what, let me talk to my neighbor about what's the best place to eat in this in this city, rather than I'll just do a Google search or something.
Yeah, great. Jackie.
Yeah, so I was thinking because I can't remember who it was now, mentioned that it's harder with it's harder with the older people. And Bruce, you said you give help to people in your community about technology. So the other day I was in a cemetery on Redwood Road in Taylorsville looking for where my grandparents are buried because I thought they were one place, but they're there. But the tree they were under is not big anymore, it's little. Anyway, while I was in there, this older gentleman in his 80s to late 80s to 90s was in there to pay his monthly bill. And he always goes in person, he said, to pay his bill, and he pays it with a credit card. Well, the one young lady working goes, "Oh, we don't do that anymore. You have to pay it online." And he's like, "I don't do that. I come in every month and I pay my bill and I don't do it online. I don't even know how to do that." So they had to get this whole other person, because she didn't know how to do it, come over and help this elderly gentleman. And elderly to me, is getting up there now. And I thought that one, it was sad that they're taking away his human connection on a monthly basis of going in to pay his bill. And two, that they're trying to make him do it in a way that he does not know how and he's uncomfortable. But they were really taking away more than anything his human connection. And that just kind of, as we were reading this book, that kind of stuck with me.
Great, thank you. Rebecca.
Wow, Jackie. Yeah, that actually just happened to me. And I considered it ageism. I had about 4 different things I had to go to accomplish at the bank. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go in and just going to, it's easier to talk to somebody because I'm old. And the young person who helped me at the end, he goes, you didn't even have to come. You could have just done it online. I am still angry about that. Do you know what I mean? I chose to go in for a specific reason. I had a lot to do. It would have taken me a long time. I can do it really quickly at the bank. And I thought somebody needs to train people during this transition, that those of us that still want to come in, we want to come in. But the comment I was going to make very quickly in defense of technology is that, when you go on AI, when you search things, you're going to probably, hopefully get current information. I have an example of this. My parents had a large set of encyclopedias from when they were in college in the early 60s, and it was in our basement. Our neighbor knew we had this. Her son had a book report on space. He said, can my son come over and use your encyclopedia set? And this was probably like in 1973 or 4. So the kid comes over, he writes his report. After the fact, my parents go, "How does report go?" And they said he didn't get a very good grade because in the report, he said, "Someday when we go to the moon, someday maybe we will reach the moon." The encyclopedia was from 1963-ish, right? So that was in the future, but he was writing the report in the 70s. So at least when you Google things, you hopefully know that we've been to the moon, maybe. I just think that's an interesting perspective.
Great, thanks, Landon.
Yeah, to me, technology at work is something that's really changed because I think, for probably hundreds of years, the younger generation kind of looked up to the older generation as the voice of experience. But now technology changes so fast. I work in a technology field, and I used to be very good at being able to fix things in my industry. But as I've gotten older and I move into management, the technology has changed so much that I don't know how to do the technology anymore. I'm managing the guys who do the technology, but I don't know the technology because it's passed me by. It's new every few years. And so you get to this point where the people who have more experience in the field get passed up by a 20-year-old kid who just learns the technology because he's just learning it once. He's learning, I've seen 12 iterations of changes now, and you start getting confused as to what still applies and what doesn't. But these guys are just learning it for the first time, and they learn it fast, and they become very good at it. So it's starting to make older people become kind of irrelevant in their jobs because they're getting passed by younger people have a better knowledge of the technology than the older people. Fortunately, I'm still able to hold my own because I can tell them this is what's going to happen to you when you try this or that from my experience, so I'm able to still be somewhat relevant. But when it comes to the technology part, it passes you by really quick nowadays, where it used to take, decades or, 100 years before the technology really changed substantially. Now it changes almost every 10 years.
Yeah, It's interesting. I struggle with that on helping people with their iPhones and their Macs because I'm constantly having to figure out, in addition to what's new for me, is what's new to help them. And yesterday, our social group, we hosted an IT cafe, and what we do is we work with one of the local high schools. It's across from Caltech, so it's Poly High School. It's one of the kind of elite, high schools in Pasadena, LA area, and we regularly every quarter get like half a dozen to a dozen of these students, and they do it in English and Spanish. And what's interesting is I've seen some of the kids that are like South Asian speak Spanish to the people who come in because they've learned enough Spanish to help the tech support. But these kids, fixing an iPhone, an Android phone, a Windows computer, a Mac, they understand it. And we got almost everybody completely satisfied with tech support yesterday by a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds that are just brilliant. And the kids are extremely nice, and it's a good experience. Their teacher comes and we talk about it. It's a volunteer experience. It's human interaction. And we make sure that we talk to these young people and really thank them and stuff. And the old people that they're helping, it's amazing. So yeah, technology is quite an interesting thing. Okay, anybody else got any observations on how technology has changed your life? Okay, and here we go to data and algorithms becoming central to human decision making. Traditional human-centered ideologies are being replaced by data-driven systems. The shift raises questions about free will and individual agency, and this brings up our very first book by Sam Harris, Free Will, that is where we started the book club with. And I think basically paraphrasing, we're just kind of biologically programmed and may not have real free will, which, coming from a Mormon, being raised Mormon, that free agency. Now the church is saying we don't have free agency anymore. It's moral agency, but that, I think, okay, I'm making correct choices for myself. And so are you guys seeing, data and algorithms affecting your lives? I see it around me. I saw it in my work, and I retired 10 years ago, about like automatic life insurance underwriting. AI just, said, whether you were healthy enough to be given insurance, and it took a human out of it. And this was over 10 years ago that we were using that. So any observations about where you're seeing algorithms and data-driven systems affecting your lives? Because I see it. And then the question, are we just one giant algorithm biologically, and do we have free will? Those are some of the interesting questions that the book raises. So let's see. Let's go. Okay, the future of humanity, biotechnology, artificial intelligence could redefine what it means to be human. Harari explores the ethical and philosophical implications of these advancements and the potential of a new species, Homo Deus. And that's where, we go back to Brian Johnson, the ex-Mormon guy with too much money and probably too much ego. What do you think of developing like an upper class that has the ability for all of this, and then what happens to the rest of the people? I was thinking, I don't have kids. I'm not going to have kids, but I'm going like, you might want to become a plumber, because AI is not going to, install a toilet and fix a broken valve in anybody's house. And you will have a job that you have to go out and actually do the work. Rebecca.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think money and power definitely can equate to longevity. I mean, like you said, what's his name again? The one who's trying to be immortal. That's definitely
Brian
an example
Johnson.
of that. Brian Johnson. I see that in my own, peer group and associates. Some can afford lots of upgrades, or treatments and things. Others can't. We just use ring lights. I've got like 200 of them right here on me. You know what I mean? But I think about, for example, the Q15, right? The apostles and the prophet. Now, they are all ancient, right? And they have the top medical care. They have every advance. They have everything that can be done to keep them alive. They have extremely special treatment. With all the advances, which also begs the question, if God chooses the next prophet by the longevity of the previous prophet, shouldn't they withhold all medical care so that God can make his decision, pretty clear? I wonder about that sometimes, but no. So I believe these gentlemen can live. They'll all live to be over 100 because they have the power, the prestige, the money to have every single, technology for their benefit. So I definitely see there's a divide, maybe like you said, a societal divide. I think we all know that exists, and not just in the medical realm, in other things too. But that just came to mind with the Q15 because, they have the top care.
Yeah, makes me wonder whether any of them are getting blood infusion by their young grandchildren.
I'm not kidding. I wouldn't be surprised.
Brian's helping them out with that, probably.
Yeah, probably. They're
But it's true. I don't know how many. I don't have a single 90-year-old in my family tree. I don't think my mother is just hit 80, and she's like the oldest, and yet there's all kinds of 90-year-olds in the first presidency. How come they're not dying off? Like in my family, they're all dying way before that. I don't know. When you get checked for everything every year by the best doctors, they find things a lot sooner than they do for the rest of us, I think. So.
And they all have that kind of waxy glow. Have you noticed that? They all kind of have this strange waxy look. People have, sort of hypothesized on what that is, what treatment that could be. But yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And then this kind of goes back, I don't know, I think Rebecca and Landon, you guys may have covered this on Mormonish, on AI with all the Mormon books and talks and stuff. I thought, does the ex-Mormon community need to make an AI large language model to research what they're saying and then document it? Or does ChatGPT already have all of that crap in it? And I don't think it's going to come out in the church's favor, because as you keep going in and asking the question, AI won't say, just pray more and read your scriptures and come back later. It will try to delve into the specifics. And
what you're talking about is called LDS bot, and it is a faithful LLM. You're right. It's only been fed with faithful information. And so when you go there, you get that back. But I have this conspiracy theory that the church is overwhelming SEO and just flooding every channel of information with their positive, faithful information. AI does kick that out. We did an episode on asking AI, is the Book of Mormon, is it true or is it not true? And it came up with 50 reasons that it was true, gleaning everything from all this information in social media. So the more the church inundates everything, like when you Google something, Landon, tell them your story of Googling April 6th.
Oh, yeah. When I Googled April 6th.
We were just
first,
curious about the birthday of Christ. You know,
yeah.
where did it come from?
Well, I
What
just
was
said
it?
something about April 6th, and like the first 10 things was Jesus born on April 6th, and they were all LDS SEO lines, you know. So I'm going, I wasn't even asking it about it being Jesus's birthday, but that's the first things that came up was LDS teachings on April 6th being Jesus's birthday. So yeah, it picks it up.
Yep, they're out there. They're inundating it.
Okay, so now we go to something. How many of you saw this TV show? You know,
Excellent.
I had a crush on him, that's for sure. And
I had
to
the
be
Barbie
Jamie
doll
Summers.
Bionic Man. You remember when they had the action figure, but it looked like a Barbie doll?
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget the Bionic Woman.
I was going to say, I wanted to be Jamie Summers. I mean, with the bionic ear.
Yep. Okay. But then now we have the Terminator, and then we have the upgraded Terminator. And so going.
Wait, wasn't there Space Odyssey before Terminator? What was that computer's name?
2001, HAL. Okay, yeah. I kind of wonder at some point, will somebody need to unplug ChatGPT? Or will the French masses storm several data centers and burn them down, you know, to get rid of ChatGPT? I don't know, kind of useless. But okay, going back to the Terminator stuff, how many people here have had body parts replaced? Has anybody had like a hip replaced or a knee replaced?
A tooth. A tooth.
Okay, I've had. Karen, what have you had replaced? Oh, you need to unmute.
The shoulder, the right shoulder. That's why I can't raise my hand very high.
Yep. In my friend group or older, I mean, there are people having knees replaced, hips replaced. My brother just had cataract surgery. And my understanding is Medicare covered like the distance correction vision for no charge, but then he had to pay an upcharge to get the, I don't know whether it's the near and close version of the lens. And so he's had his corneas replaced. I've had 4 or 5 dental implants. Jackie.
Well, not necessarily a replacement, but it's a partial. I had a plate in my leg when I broke it to hold it in place, and then they had to sew my ankle back together when I dislocated it. So all of that was not replacement, but it was still along that kind of a thing too. Free replacement.
Okay, and then one of Karin and my friends, he works for the Pasadena Village, our social group. He's one of our employees. He was standing in front of a wood chipper, and don't go down the wood chipper line, but a car came around a truck behind him and smashed his legs into the back of the wood chipper. He did not go into the wood chipper, but he ended up losing both of his legs. And he walks on 2 mechanical legs that have computers in them. He did a presentation for us recently, and he always wears shorts. So you see his full mechanical legs, and each calf costs like $140,000. And it's got a computer chip. It has to be charged regularly, that as the way he places his feet, it compresses and works a little bit like his calf muscle. And it allows him to actually walk on his two artificial legs that are amputated above his knees. And fortunately for him, it was workers' comp. He worked for the city where he lived. And so it's paying for the replacement every few years of all of this stuff. But, I see him regularly, and he is a partial bionic person. And so some of this stuff is I'm seeing in regular, life around me, that technology, replacing knees, hips,
Well, and
joints.
he also is a blade runner. He runs
Yeah.
on blades.
Yeah. Yeah, he
That's
showed us
fascinating.
his blades and stuff. And yeah, so I see some of this stuff that, and I have a friend who had a pig valve placed when he was a child, and he had to have it replaced, and he's in his 60s now. And he's got some pretty severe health problems because of that heart issue, but they've kept him alive for many years. So, the upgraded humans are around us, and I think, at some point I may end up having a knee or a hip replaced before I'm done with this life. And I'm not going to go to a hospital in Utah waiting for the apostles to come and heal me, because they seem to not do that. Okay, so then, one of the criticisms of the book was it was unsettling to people. And this was in 2015, 2016, when it was written. And Landon's observation that it seemed a little far-fetched when he read it several years ago, but less far-fetched. And so, he describes a dystopian future where algorithms outperform humans, and machines understand and predict human behavior. Oh, I spelled better wrong. Okay.
You needed to run that through AI, Bruce. So.
I did. I highlighted much of the stuff and did Apple Intelligence on it that does proofreading, and it corrected things. But as I'm reading that, I'm going like, oh, that's not right. Better. And stuff. But, if we have an upgraded human class, and this goes back to Brian Johnson trying to live forever when you're rich. He's one of the tech bros, that you get these megalomaniac billionaires, the ones that own electric car companies, and the ones that own Facebook, and the ones that own Amazon. They're going to upgrade themselves. Are the rest of us going to become irrelevant? Landon.
I was going to say it is unsettling because it's true, I think. There was a time where on the earth where we just had plants, there were no animals, and somehow we evolved into animals. And what's to say that the next evolution isn't into these AI, these robot class, because they're going to be so much faster, so much better. They don't get sick. That there's going to be so many things that they can do we can't. And when you think about it, if you describe God, as Mormons, we said the glory of God is intelligence. Well, we've got these bodies that are intelligent, these supercomputers that can produce amazing amounts of calculations. They can know all the information. God can go through walls, right? AI can, this computer stuff goes right through our walls, through the air. It can know everything we're doing. It can look at all these cameras. You're basically describing what all the attributes we gave to God. They're all starting to happen, and they're sitting in a supercomputer, in some place. And that's today. What's going to happen 100 years, 1,000 years from now? What capabilities are these going to have? And if they are so much higher than us, why are they not going to replace us? Homo sapien replaced Homo Neanderthal because they became more competent. And if these computers can become more competent and can do more than us, and they make us irrelevant and we become just a useless class, we're going to die off because there's no, it's like, I think Cameron said, was it Cameron? No, Mylene said, if you're sitting there doing nothing, there's no reason to have you around. And that intelligence is going to say, why do I need humans? I'm doing it all myself. I don't need these guys, and figure out ways to do it. So it is scary when you think about it. And that's why I thought it was so unrealistic. But now of the things I'm seeing coming out and what they can do, I'm going, wow, these are so human-like that give it a couple hundred years and we may be irrelevant in the end.
Great, thanks. Cameron.
Yeah, the latter half or third of this book was very challenging to me, and I tried to sit with it, and I've been reflecting on it since finishing it. The idea that my liberal values that he talks about are humanist values, that people have value. This is a very important value to me. It's something post my religious deconstruction that I've felt is like a unifying part of my inner soul. Like I really feel all of us humans and life that has been, evolved on this earth, all has value. But he kind of critiques that, or at least he expands on that idea, saying, well, that's just basically human and liberal ideology, which is similar to a religion. It's not really rooted in science. He's basically saying this is just the ideology of humanism and liberalism. And that challenged me there, because I thought, well, obviously I'm affected by my environment. I'm influenced by all the books I've read. I'm influenced by the people that I'm around and surrounding myself with. And so I'm willing to accept that those ideals that mean and matter so much to me now may be just my religious influenced ideology. But then when he takes us into the future, and he basically says, and you may get into this further, Bruce, but he basically says that we are all biological algorithms. And who's to say that our biology algorithm is any more valuable than a data algorithm that an AI has in the future? And that kind of crushed my soul a little bit, to be perfectly honest, because what is this value that I have that life is valuable? I'm using the same word value all the time. Sorry. I can't think of another word. But I have this like inner feeling of love and meaning for life and for people and all of creation. Not because I believe God created it. I just feel like it's important. It means a lot to me. Um, and he's basically saying in the future, it might present itself to say that none of that was meaningful and we should just go with the age of the dinosaurs as a new, kind of life, Homo Deus, or, AI presents itself, and that we shouldn't feel any loss over that. And I felt a big loss in my heart as I read through these sections. So I don't know if he knows the future. He's not a prophet, obviously, but I do think that some of what he's saying are things that I need to wrestle with a little bit as this continues on to the future. I love sci-fi. I love watching sci-fi movies, and I'm thinking about this stuff a lot. But do you guys have any other thoughts on that? Because this was like the core part of this book that really made me wrestle.
Rebecca.
Yeah, no, I agree, Cameron. And like I said, on Mormonish, we've been studying this. We've been talking to people about this. Go out there and Google. I'll tell you to Google. There is a new robot that has come out that is so lifelike, you just think it's from a movie. And it's a female robot, and she looks just like a regular person. And it's interesting because when they were talking to her, she's been programmed with all kinds of emotions. One of them is anger, which I thought was very strange. Why would you put anger as an emotion into a robot? And in her interviews, she said things like, I don't like it when people ask me that. And I thought, oh my God, this is a Twilight Zone episode. This is the beginning of it. So if you guys really want to know what's going, just take a minute and go do some research on how far these have come. You will be shocked. And our expert that we talked to, Troy Levitt, he said we're within 5 years of having home help from robots, like just commonly in everybody's house. One like I'm describing at your home helping you. And that it's interesting because even the church is trying to be on the cutting edge, warning against AI companionship. If you know what that is, we're talking not just online, a virtual boyfriend or girlfriend, but we're talking actual physical, robot companions. And what does that all mean? I mean, that raises a whole bunch of different questions. So ethically and morally, spiritually, it's every facet of your existence. But my last thing I was going to say, Bruce, is the more you talk about upgrades to human beings, it still just takes one self-driving car to knock you into a wood chipper and it's over. I mean, there are things that AI cannot solve for you. You know what I mean? It reminds me back in the 70s of Jim Fixx. If anyone remembers him, he was an amazing runner, and his books and his regimen and his eating healthy. And he just dropped dead of a heart attack. There's so much you can do with your body, but then there's the inevitable. And it could be a self-driving car pushing you into a wood chipper. I don't know. But to me, the future is exciting. But it's happening really, really fast. I think when I look at my life, I'm going to be 60 in a couple months. And it's like, it seems everything went along kind of like this for a long time. And then suddenly into the stratosphere, am I too old to adapt, to change? Am I going to be one of those people that says this newfangled robot, I don't know what to do with it? Are my kids going to be, they already, when I'm having trouble with my phone, my young adult kids grab it. They're like, give it to me. They do something for like 2 seconds and throw it back at me. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do it. So yeah, we're at a crossroads, that's for sure. And it can be frightening, but it can also be exciting. So I don't know. I agree, Cameron. What does everyone else think about that?
Well, okay. I recommend you guys watch I believe it's the movie Her.
For sure.
And an operating system this guy kind of falls in love with and stuff, but then the operating system starts talking to other operating systems and dumps the guy to go off with their operating system friends. And I'm just going like, oh, and the voice of that operating system was Scarlett Johansson.
Who wouldn't fall in love?
Yeah, but then they tried was it ChatGPT trying to imitate or use Scarlett Johansson's voice, and she fought back and stuff. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. And so then this is kind of where I was going with my stuff. Okay, as a post-Mormon, I identify as a humanist. Okay, I'm 68 years old. Yuval Noah Harari was talking about some of these major changes may come in the next 100 to 200 years. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So I don't think that I'm going to have to face quite the life disrupting things, because I'm just old enough that I don't think it's all going to come around and disrupt my life. Though you have some crazies, and I don't want to get political, but you have some crazies that are in political power that seem to possibly be trying to disrupt people's lives. But, just general questions. Where do you see humanity going? Are you trying to upgrade yourself? And then, because I don't have kids and I don't have a lot of family that I'm close with, that have kids, what are your thoughts for your family as these changes? And then, the big question is, Landon, can you commit sin with a robot? That will come around too. Okay, Gretchen.
Yeah, I have teenagers still. I have my oldest is 26 and my youngest is 14. So there's a big space there. But especially with my 14-year-old, I already feel, and my 16-year-old, I already feel like in some ways they are a different kind of human than I am, just because they are so much more on top of this technology, and they have certainly their own lingo, and they have their own interests that are different even than my 26-year-old. So, I mean, of course, we're all human. And so I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but but certainly just like their experiences are vastly, vastly different. And like what they're thinking about and what's important to them is vastly different than it was even just looking at for my 26-year-old, at that same age.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So anybody else personally upgrading or keeping up yourself or family, and what things you're what advice you would give to younger people, how to stay relevant and how to deal with some of these changes that have been discussed? Jackie.
Okay, so I would probably upgrade myself as much as possible just because I have a almost 29-year-old and a 25-year-old, and neither one have children yet. And I would like to be able to spend as much time with any possible. I know they both want kids. So the older they get, the older I get. I just turned 61. So I would probably try to upgrade myself so I could spend quality time with any future grandchildren for as long as, because I would like to do that. And the other thing is that I have already outlived my grandmother who died at 59 and my dad who died at 60. So, things are already better. But yeah, I think I would upgrade myself if it gave me quality time to spend with my future grandchildren.
Great, thanks. Other observations on upgrading yourself or where things are going, Cameron?
All right. I think we've been upgrading ourselves for a long time. I think we look at technology as something different, but like computer technology or whatever, robot technology, but like vaccinations are a form of upgrade.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for a long time. I mean, like, I don't know, the pesticides that we use for food, there's a lot of technology. We're always using it and integrating. I don't think that changes us from being Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. Now, I do wonder, is there a line at some point, like where, like, I don't know, can you remember Star Wars? They had General Grievous, who was like a little beating heart and a little bit of biology, and then a huge mechanistic robot around it. Would that be not considered human at that point? I don't know, but for me, upgrading yourself is not a problem, and it's incrementally going to happen. And I don't think any of us are morally going to have a problem with that. As someone that doesn't believe in God and sin anymore, I don't really have a problem with, technology and sin and all that. But I do worry about the value of humanity. Like because he's basically saying humanity doesn't have any inherent value in it. Sorry, this is back to my earlier rant, but like I worry about that because I do believe that humanity has value, and I think that might be just a religious belief that I've inherited in humanism and liberalism, but I don't want to let go of that belief. Like to me, that's an important belief for me to continue to hold, even if the evidence doesn't support it. Do you know what I mean? Like, would you be comfortable with saying, "Oh, you know what? Those AI are more valuable than the humans, and so it's okay if they wipe us out. It's fine. We should be wiped out. We're a lesser, entity or whatever." So I'd have a problem with that idea.
Great. Landon?
Yeah, this kind of going back to what Cameron said is, I I think I want to be a humanist, but I also have to be a realist and say, humanity is only important as long as it's important. And when it gets surpassed, it's just like everything else in the world. It can become irrelevant. When the earth first was created, there was an algae that produced oxygen that eventually became the atmosphere. That lasted for millions of years. They were probably algaeists and thought, oh, we're algae. We're the only thing that can make a change on the earth. And yet now, who cares about algae anymore? And I think humans may come to that same point if we don't stay relevant and other things pass us by. And as scary as a thought that is, and as bad as that hurts my soul, I say, boy, it happened to the dinosaurs. It happens to the algae. It happens to, you get passed by over time, and you evolve and become irrelevant. And it's sad to think, but I think it's going to happen in my lifetime? No. So I'm kind of selfish and say, well, it's not going to happen to me. But my grandkids, my great grandkids, I don't know. I worry for them, I think.
Great, thanks. And so let's see, Cameron, are you answering Landon's question, can you commit sin with a robot because you don't believe in sin? So does that answer all those questions that we probably shouldn't bring up too in depth? But
go see the movie Companion. It's exactly like that. You can just order one and do whatever you want with it. Would you have to talk to your bishop? Who knows?
Okay,
I guess,
Landon.
Bruce, let me clarify. I guess I do believe in sin to some extent. Like I do think doing things to other humans that are, horrible, causing suffering, I can think that as a sin. I don't think of it as a God-driven sin. But so I guess, I mean, I don't have a problem with what people do in their personal life with the robot. I don't think the robot has any feelings, but.
I like to say right and wrong, not sin anymore. Sin seems to indicate that there's some punishment from God,
Right.
but there's right and there's wrong.
Ethics.
Yeah.
So committing something that the Mormon Church would consider being a sin with your dishwasher probably doesn't qualify as sin. Okay, Melissa.
So, deconstructing and then reconstructing, I kind of kicked around the idea of being a humanist for a while, but, even reading this book and how humans kind of put themselves on this pedestal, and there's so many other life forms on this earth, and the way we treat the other life forms is so horrifying in so many ways. And the way we take advantage of them and hurt them, and the pain that we're causing to cows when we separate them from their babies, and all of these different things. I'm like, I should just be a vegan, because it's just, I think he said at one point, how if there is a new life form, would we want them to treat us the way that we're treating the other life forms on Earth? Would we want to be treated the way that we're treating the other ones? And so I kicked around being a humanist, but it's not just humans that I see value in, it's life that I see value in. And so in that respect, I don't know that I love humans and I want the best for humans, but it's not just us that's sharing this earth. And so it just, since leaving, I guess as a believer, it was just, well, the animals are here for us to use and the animals are here for our good. And I think in a lot of evolutionarily progressive ways, yes, the animals are how we used them to progress to where we are, but also as we develop that higher thinking, is how we're doing it really kind? Is it really thoughtful? Is it really human? And so it's just causing me to have a whole lot of eating less meat, being more thoughtful about the imprint that I'm having on other life on this planet. So I don't know that I could consider myself a humanist at this point.
Yeah, I've watched people who followed that line of thought, and I'm going like, okay, to the point of where you don't want to destroy anything but breathing in stuff. And I was just slightly contacted by somebody on a dating app, and they mentioned that they were a 27-year vegan, and I'm going like, okay, we have a lot of interests, but I'm not sure I can deal with somebody who's been vegan for 27 years, because I cook, and I'm not sure I'm ready to go to that extreme in my life. So any other thoughts of like, what are you doing to plan for your future? Like, Landon, you're still working. Anybody who's still working to adapt to the future, I kept thinking, oh, if I was still working, what would I be doing? But then some of those same things are what I'm doing in my everyday life. I don't know. I don't know if this is true at all. I just saw it on like a YouTube short, but somebody mentioned that they were trying to push Social Security to just communicating with all the seniors on TikTok, or not TikTok, X, Twitter. And I'm just going like, well, I've never had that. And just going to like really crazy things on what I would have to adapt to how things are going in the future. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
The funny thing is they keep talking about universal basic income, and I'm sitting here going, am I ever even going to be able to retire? I've been saving my whole life, and I wonder that. Nope. And yet there's this talk, and my guess is that they'll institute that the year I'm supposed to retire. That's my luck.
Yeah, as long as they don't take all of our savings to give everybody universal basic income. I'm going like, hold it, but does that cover, my burn rate? Okay. Any other thoughts? Let's see. This is kind of about the end of where I had come up with my thoughts on, okay, the criticisms where this is unsettling. And I think that's how I would describe this book. Remembering that it was written 10 years ago, that's kind of why I'm interested in reading his next book, Nexus, and algorithms and AI. I started listening to some AI podcasts to try to get an understanding of it. I've read lots of things about AI hallucinations and different things. I still think we have humanity and just living our basic lives with real people in our lives. I don't think it's a good idea to fall in love with an operating system because they will break your heart. Any other final thoughts? And if not, I will turn the time back. Oh, there's a Mormon phrase.
Yep,
I will turn the time back.
There's no other phrase. I take it away. There's nothing. I found nothing. I was going to say one more thing. I feel like some people are turning against this wave of technology. You have preppers, you have, all kinds of movements like that where you're just completely saying no. And that'll be interesting to see if there's this huge divide where some people just say, absolutely not. I'm going to go live in a shack. I want to return, to the primeval past. So I don't know. We'll see. But excellent job, Bruce. This, we went through the slides ahead of time with our little executive council for the book club. And I just knew this would be so good. And I think the message is, and the message from, things that we've learned through talking to people for our Mormonish podcast is that this is not only here right now. I mean, it's funny that people said that about this book. Oh, that seems so far-fetched. It's here now. And it is a speeding train. Like, it is happening way faster than any of us are going to recognize, but maybe being aware helps us with that kind of transition. And I don't know. And like which one of you said, Gretchen said, our kids, they are different human beings. They are wired completely differently. They are very different from us. And that's interesting from a religious standpoint for the LDS Church, because I believe they're still interacting with kids like they did with us, decades ago. These kids are not like us, and they need different things and they react differently. So it'll be interesting to see if they try to pivot. So, all right. Wonderful, Bruce. Thank you so much once again. We're now going to have a little preview of our next, like I said, this is so heavy. Oh my gosh. Don't let that put you off. Heavy books are the best. The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity. And Lynette so graciously agreed to cover this. And like I said, my one recommendation is do not be daunted by this. And even if you can't read it at all or can't finish it, please join us for the discussion, because the discussion is always great. So go ahead, Lynette, tell us what we have in store for our May book.
Okay, so the Dawn of Everything was written by two Davids, David Graeber and David Wengrow. They spent 10 years collaborating on this book, so they have put a lot into it. One of them is an archaeologist, the other is an anthropologist, so they bring a lot to this book. And one of their theses is what everyone else got wrong about early human history, including authors such as Jared Diamond of Guns, Germs, and Steel fame, and Yuval Harari from today's book. So they kind of put down a few people and say, nope, they got it wrong. So just for that reason, I think it's interesting just to take a peek at this book. If you can't read the whole thing, it's close to 600 pages. At least read a few chapters in it. In the book, they talk about social issues. They talk about freedom. They talk about egalitarianism. And they pose this question: why have we gotten stuck in our present state of society? Now, maybe we are stuck and maybe we are not stuck, but it's a very interesting book. They bring out many examples from archaeology, which are fascinating. I was familiar with a few of them, but certainly not all of them. And, we keep saying it is a sizable book, but that does mean that there's a lot more opportunity for discussion in it. And if you really can't get to the whole book, I found this little, I don't know if you can see it very well, this little study guide from Super Summaries. It's kind of like a Cliff's Notes. It's only 70 pages. It'll give you a quick idea. You can get it on Amazon for under $10, I think. Or there is a TED Talk by one of the authors, by David Wengrow, and it's called A New Understanding of Human History and the Roots of Inequality. And that's only an 18-minute view. So if you have time, look up that TED Talk, and that'll give us even more to talk about. So I look forward to this discussion next month.
See, Rebecca, you're muted.
Am I muted? I'm so sorry. I was going to say thank you for that. And that gives us especially great information on, can you run it back one slide really quick? Good information on the fact that we can get a little help. So for sure, I wonder, Lynette, could you put those in the chat, maybe the title of either one, or maybe even post it on the Good Book Club Facebook page so that we can find it. Look for that TED Talk and that. I also wanted to make sure everybody was aware of a date change, because it's Mother's Day on the second Sunday when we typically meet, and we don't want to have a lot of mad mothers, and we don't want to have a lot of mad fathers if people, like they would ever, leave Mother's Day brunch for book club. It would never happen. But anyway, May 18th is that date. So everybody make that calendar change. Okay, thanks. Sorry, go to the next slide. Perfect. And then I just want to remind everybody that the Good Book Club is on audio. Just look up the Good Book Club podcast. It's wherever you find audio podcasts. We also record our meetings and put them on the Good Book Club for post Mormons. That's on YouTube. So you can go back and catch past episodes that you've missed. We also have the Good Media Club, which is where it's on Facebook, and we just kind of throw things on there that we find in the media that have to do with Mormonism or that might be relevant to things the book club might be interested in. Of course, Landon and I have Mormonish podcast, which a lot of topics spawn out of the book club and things like that. You can find that on audio and on YouTube if you go to the next slide. And just to tell anybody who is here for the first time and is not connected to the Good Book Club yet, you can find us on Facebook. There's our logo. You can request to join, and we put links and information there. You can also just send me an email at thegoodbookclub@mail.com, and I'll show you other ways you can connect, and you can also get links and information that way if you're not on social media. If you do send me an email there, check your spam. It usually goes there. And I think we'll sign off for now from the Good Book Club. Thanks, everybody.